This is why I haven't done any interviews. This is why I just kept my mouth shut for a long time. A lot of fighters have been keeping their mouths shut for a long time.
After years of staying quiet, top UFC fighters are finally speaking up about a system they say has kept them underpaid and ignored. Athletes who bring in millions to the company are revealing shockingly low paychecks, and their stories are now sparking a major conversation about fighter compensation. One fighter at the top of his career admitted that despite making the UFC huge profits, he walked away with what he called pocket change. When he confronted Dana White, he was met with cold silence. No explanation, no discussion, just a dismissive shrug. That moment exposed a deeper problem that many fighters say has existed for years. A perfect example is Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, one of the greatest champions in UFC history. Back in 2011, he fought for a world title, a massive event watched by millions. Yet his base pay was only $14,000. And that number was before he paid coaches, managers, taxes, and training camp costs. After all expenses, the champion barely had anything left. A world-class athlete earning scraps. When fans resurfaced this information in 2025, the MMA community was furious. But Johnson's story isn't an exception. It's common. Fast forward to 2025. Charles Energy Johnson earned a knockout win at UFC Shanghai, along with a $50,000 bonus. It should have been a life-changing night. Yet when he checked his bank account, it was in the negative while expecting a newborn child. Ariel Helwani shared the story, and fighters like Jeff Molina immediately confirmed that low fighter pay has been a problem for years. Everyone knows it. The fighters know it. The fans know it. The UFC knows it. The real issue? No one at the top seems willing to fix it.
You don't like the way we pay our fighters? Too bad. Go start another MMA organization and you go figure out how to...
Dana White's response to criticism about fighter pay has basically been, deal with it. No promise of improvements, no acknowledgement of concerns, just a flat dismissal. But the numbers tell the real story. The average UFC fighter earns around $51,000 a year, and nearly half of the roster makes under $45,000 annually. Compare that to the UFC's reported $1.4 billion in revenue in 2024, and the gap becomes almost unbelievable. And here's the part most fans don't realize. UFC fighters aren't employees. They're labeled as independent contractors, which means no health coverage, no pension, no long-term security, and no guaranteed contracts. If a fighter gets injured, the bills are on them. If their career ends because of brain trauma or wear and tear, they're left to deal with the consequences alone.
Like, I remember when I fought Chris Carriasso, let's say I made $150,000, right? And then I'll fight the next challenger, Kyoji Horiguchi, I would make less money.
Another fighter put it perfectly. In the UFC, sometimes winning actually leaves you worse financially. Imagine that, rising in the rankings, performing better, taking tougher fights, and somehow walking away with less money. It's a system that punishes success instead of rewarding it. And fighters are finally calling out how backwards that is.
Right now, I'm like, how this, because you always get your show and your win. Excuse me, your show and win, right?
Right.
Your show might be $150K, and your win's $50,000 bonus. Typically goes up by escalator of $3,000, $10,000, $15,000. It all depends, right? But then when I fought Chris Carriasso, I made, let's say $150,000, and then when I fought Kyoji Horiguchi, I made less. Even though the pay it went up, I still made less money.
Why?
The key? Pay-per-view points. Only the elite fighters at the very top ever earn them, and even then, the UFC decides who gets featured on PPV cards. This fighter shared that he spent years grinding in the octagon, chasing the one thing that actually brings real wealth in MMA, those elusive pay-per-view earnings.
But if I land on a Conor fight, if I land on a Conor fight or a John Jones fight or whatever, that's going to bring in 875,000 pay-per-view buys. If you make $350K and then the pay-per-view structure is $0 to $200, $0, $2 to $4, $1. 4 to 6, $1.50, then 6 to 8, $2. You add all that up.
Here's the shocking part. After years of fighting for pay-per-view points, this fighter only earned them for a single bout, even after 11 straight title defenses. Just imagine the money he missed out on. The story gets even tougher. Fighters like Morab Dvalishvili admitted that as recently as 2020, he was working construction between fights because $10,000 purses weren't enough to cover expenses. And then there's Stipe Miocic, a UFC Hall of Famer and former heavyweight champion, who worked full-time as a firefighter during his career, one of the greatest heavyweights in history, still needing a day job because UFC pay alone wasn't enough.
Why do we keep hearing about the underpaying stuff?
Well, right now in particular, there's probably less money because the fighters have to, there's no gate.
There's no live gate.
Yeah, there's no live gate. And that's an extreme amount of money. But there's also fighters that agree to certain deals.
Even UFC commentator Joe Rogan, who's paid by the company, has spoken openly about fighter pay. On his podcast, he said that stepping into the octagon is incredibly dangerous, and athletes deserve an incredibly generous payday for putting themselves at risk in front of millions. But Rogan also often defends a business side, pointing out that the parent company WME, which bought the UFC for over $4 billion in 2016, is supposedly struggling despite signing a $7.7 billion deal. Meanwhile, fighters are going into debt even after winning. This is a system Dana White has built and defended for decades. Bonuses have remained $50,000 since 2006. Starting purses are only $10,000 to $12,000, and temporary increases were scrapped because fighters didn't show enough urgency. In August 2022, White claimed, "Guys get paid what they're supposed to get paid, they eat what they kill." But when the UFC's value has grown by thousands of percent, that argument barely scratches the surface. Fighters aren't seeing their fair share. The controversy reached a breaking point in November 2025, not from a knockout or championship fight, but from allegations of widespread fight fixing, even triggering FBI investigations.
When it comes to me as a human that likes fighting, I know how fucking dangerous that shit is. You should get paid an incredibly generous amount of money to step into a cage fight for millions of people to see.
Dana White, visibly shaken, revealed that the UFC works with IC3, a top betting monitoring firm. They flagged suspicious activity before the fight between Isaac Dahlgren and Yadir Delval, as heavy bets suddenly poured in on the underdog Delval. Even though Dahlgren was a clear favorite, UFC officials called him directly to check for injuries, debts, or any illegal approaches. He insisted everything was fine, and the fight went on. Dahlgren was submitted in the first round via rear naked choke. Sportsbooks refunded bets and pulled props, and White immediately contacted the FBI and Nevada's Athletic Commission withheld Dahlgren's purse. He was cut from the UFC, and federal investigators opened a full probe. Here's the connection to fighter pay. After the scandal, multiple fighters admitted they had been approached to throw fights. Vince Morales said he was offered $70,000 to lose a single bout, more than the median UFC salary for an entire year. In other words, some fighters could earn more for losing once than winning all year, highlighting just how broken the system is.
Probably about 1 o'clock that day, we're with a company called IC360, and they are the best bet monitoring company in the business. And they reached out to us and they told us that there was some unusual action going on with that fight. Do we know anything? You know, we didn't. So what we did was we called the fighter and his lawyer.
Dana White's outrage is understandable. Fight fixing undermines the integrity of the sport. But there's a bigger picture he often overlooks. If fighters were paid fairly, $70,000 to throw a fight wouldn't even be tempting. It would be pocket change compared to their real earnings. Fans on social media quickly notice the irony. Fighters earning $250 to show up and another $250 for a win being expected to resist offers 100 times that size. The FBI's investigation soon widened, with reports suggesting that over 100 UFC bouts showed suspicious betting activity. White dismissed it as clickbait, but the questions and concerns were already out in the open.
Literally, the first thing we did was call the FBI.
Here's an important clarification. Journalist Harry Mack didn't claim that hundreds of fights were under investigation. He said hundreds have been flagged by betting monitors. That's a key difference. Flagged means suspicious activity that needs review, not proof of wrongdoing. Still, seeing so many bouts raise red flags are concerning. This isn't the UFC's first brush with betting controversies. In 2022, Derek Batwa, minor, lost a fight amid heavy bets placed against him, following reports of a leaked injury. Coach James Krause, who had trained some of Isaac Dahlgren's team, was suspended over offshore betting connections. In response, The UFC banned all fighters from betting on UFC events and cut ties with Krause-affiliated gyms.
If you try to do this, I've been very vocal and very open about this. We will be your worst enemy. We will immediately go after you, guns a-blazing, with the FBI and whoever else we need to get. And we will do everything we can to make sure you go to prison.
The 2022 investigation never fully closed. It's still ongoing and now ties into the 2025 betting scandal. Dana White confirmed meeting twice with FBI Director Kash Patel, and agents were even present at UFC headquarters. Things get more controversial considering White's personal ties to Donald Trump, including appearances at Republican national conventions and campaign donations. Patel also has close connections to Trump. Analysts like Luke Thomas have raised questions about a potential conflict of interest. Could the FBI hold the UFC fully accountable if it risks embarrassing Dana White, a friend of the former president?
Now you see people out there talking, oh, there's hundreds of fights under events. Total usual clickbait. IC360 are
very quickly.
Thomas voiced skepticism that the investigation will fully hold powerful figures accountable given these connections. Agree or not, it highlights real concerns about transparency and accountability in how the UFC and its leadership are being scrutinized. Interview 11. Dana White is understandably frustrated that fighters didn't report these approaches sooner. But context matters. Low-paid fighters, struggling to make ends meet, may see life-changing offers and hesitate to alert an organization that already underpays them. Many fear retaliation, especially for speaking out about pay or working conditions. The UFC has a history of cutting fighters who become too vocal. The truth is, betting scandals and fighter pay issues are deeply connected. When athletes can't survive on their legitimate earnings, they become vulnerable. This is an excuse for unethical behavior. It's an explanation of the system that allows it to happen.
So when this did happen, a couple of years ago, whenever it was, that investigation is still ongoing and now will be a part of this investigation too.
Analysts point out that the fighters targeted for these schemes aren't stars like Conor McGregor or John Jones. They're mid to lower tier athletes, skilled enough to compete in the UFC, but not earning enough to be financially secure. In response to the scandal, Dana White introduced a new policy. Fighters under suspicion must be cleared by investigators before competing. While this protects the sport's integrity, it doesn't fix the underlying pay problem that leaves athletes vulnerable. Fans quickly connected the dots online. One comment summed it up: blame Dana. They're paid peanuts. All we can do is take advantage when we see what's up. The scandal also revealed that the UFC knew about suspicious betting before the Dahlgren fight and allowed it to continue. Analysts argued this could make the organization partially complicit, since they questioned the fighter, got denials, and still let the bout happen.
Do I think that the FBI agents on the ground are going to do a good job? I have no reason to think that they wouldn't. Do I think that Kash Patel is going to go out of his way to make the UFC look bad if he needed to?
It's like, you're seeing things out on the internet where like fighters are coming out and going, oh, I was approached. Really? Why didn't you tell us that?
What you might imagine a higher end UFC fighter to make, they're good enough to make it to the UFC, but not good enough to make money in the UFC. And that's kind of one of that's who these people who are asking them to throw fights. That was the time to pull the bout. That was the moment to pull the bout. If they needed to kill time, they can kill time on the broadcast. If they need to explain whatever they need to say, it was pulled for undisclosed reasons and then discuss it afterwards.
For us to have that conversation about the Rodtang fight is how it should be. It should be like a marriage, right? It should be like, hey, we want you to fight Rodtang for the world title. And I'm like, you know what? I appreciate that, but I think that's deserved for somebody else. You're killing it. You're fucking just destroying everybody in the division. And next thing you know, the CEO or the boss who goes, I'm gonna get rid of that fucking division because it's not bringing any money. How do you think it's gonna make you feel?
Not good.
Exactly.
And you go fucking figure out how to do it. And you can pay them $10 million a fight, $30 million a fight, whatever you want to do. We run a business. We've been very good at it. If you try to do this, I've been very vocal and very open about this. We will be your worst enemy. We will immediately go after you, guns a-blazing, with the FBI and whoever else we need to get. And we will We will do everything we can to make sure you go to prison.
But if I land on a Conor fight, or if I land on a Conor fight or a John Jones fight or whatever, that's going to bring in 875,000 pay-per-view buys. If you make 350K and then the pay-per-view structure is 0 to 200, $0, 2 to 4, $1, 4 to 6, $1.50, and 6 to 8, $2. You add all that up.